Now, go ahead.
Alicia, can you move slide? Thank you. We'd like to take a moment to recognize the support of San Jose State University as the founding partner of this Library 2.0 mini conference. And thank you for joining us today as we present From Audit to Action, Cultivating and Sustaining Organizational Efforts in DEIA, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility. We are excited to be here today to share our work as part of our library's diversity committee and learn about the great work being done at other libraries as well. We would like to mention that this presentation is a work in progress, and we are hoping to present and share our work at a future in-person ARL Ideal Conference in 2024, which is the Association of Research Libraries, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility in Libraries and Archives Conference. So before we begin, we'd like to offer the following land acknowledgement as we present to you from Sacramento State. In order to acknowledge the original nations on whose land we live, learn, and work. We acknowledge with respect the land our campus is on today was and continues to be the homelands of the indigenous people of this area, the Nisem Pawanan, Nisenan, and Miwok. The larger Sacramento area and its rivers serve as a gathering place for many local tribes from the surrounding valley and foothills, including the Southern Maidu, Patwin, and Winton. We recognize these lands and riverways as unceded traditional territories of these Native peoples. We further recognize these California Native nations and respect their sovereignty. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm a commitment to build relationships and foster a university environment of success to better serve Native nations and communities. And now I'll start us off with some introductions. So my name is Rachael-Joy Davis. I use she, her pronouns, and I identify as biracial. My current role in the library is Department Head of User Services. I currently serve as chair of the Diversity Committee, and I've also served on the committee previously in 2017 through 2019. I volunteered to serve on the committee in 2021 as a way to return to this work in support of the library and campus-wide DEIA initiatives. Briana?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Briana Zaragoza, and I am the Education Librarian in the Research and Instruction Department. My pronouns are she, hers, hers. And I joined Sacramento State University Library and the DEI Committee in November of 2021. And I joined because as a Latina, I feel strongly about building and cultivating a diverse, inclusive, and accessible profession and workplace. And lastly, I am currently the co-chair of the DEI committee. Sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
And I'm Alicia Zuniga, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Public Health and Science Librarian in the Research and Instruction Department. I've been a member of the committee for just over 1 year, and I joined because I had been on a similar committee in my previous organization, and I wanted to continue the work. And I also wanted to make sure that as a Latina, a group that's underrepresented in our library, that I had a seat at the table as we make these changes and decisions. So in today's presentation, we're going to share our library's progress toward uncovering, understanding, and addressing organizational efforts related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA, as we'll refer to it throughout the presentation. We'll discuss the first major project led by the library's Diversity Committee, which was the implementation of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Self-Assessment Audit, or DEIA for short, developed by Dr. Kawana Bright and Nikath J. Goss. And we will conclude by sharing some of our current work in collaboration with our university's Division of Inclusive Excellence. By the end of the presentation, we hope that you will have a sense of the purpose and the importance of conducting an internal diversity audit and that you will be equipped with information to help you determine whether starting a similar project would be appropriate for your organization. By sharing our process and challenges, we hope you are able to identify key roles and responsibilities of library personnel who can assist with DEIA efforts in your library, and that you gain insight for establishing partnerships with other groups to help you maintain your momentum. Our presentation will specifically focus on the process of organizing a DEIA audit for our library, rather than the results that are unique to our library, so that you may replicate these efforts to produce the most relevant findings to your own institution.
So first, let us share some background about the university, and the library, and the initial planning that led us to implementing the DEIA. Sacramento State is the sixth largest of the 23 campuses in the California State University system, with nearly 31,000 students enrolled. Our campus has federal designations as a Hispanic Serving Institution, or HSI, and as an Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander Serving Institution, or ANAPC. The University Library has a central location on campus and is a lively hub of intellectual discovery on campus that is open 7 days a week. The library's mission is to inspire excellence in teaching, learning, and scholarly activities. The library holds over 1.4 million volumes comprised of print and electronic monographs and serials, and is a U.S. government depository. Library personnel is comprised of 25 library faculty, 33 staff, and approximately 60 student assistants. So as part of the library's 2021 through 2026 strategic plan, the library committed to 5 goals, one of which is to focus our collective efforts on strengthening organizational excellence by investing in a library culture that respects, grows, and listens to all its members. Implementing the DEIA was listed as an indicator of success and was ultimately an employee-initiated endeavor. In March of 2022, the Dean of the Library submitted a one-time funding request for a diversity audit and consultant in response to a call for DEI proposals put forward by Academic Affairs and Inclusive Excellence. The Dean's proposal demonstrated alignment with campus DEI initiatives and goals related to the Anti-Racism and Inclusive Campus Plan that was developed in 2021, and the Dean's funding request was granted. The library immediately began working with Dr. Bright to implement the DEIA as a means to capture the library's baseline in DEIA efforts and continue the work of building a more welcoming organization. And this work, as we mentioned, was led by the library's diversity committee. For those of you who may not be familiar with the DEIA, it is a diversity, equity, and inclusion self-assessment tool developed by Dr. Kawana Bright, Assistant Professor of Library Science at East Carolina University, and Nikot Goss, an organization development consultant, facilitator, and librarian. And so we've disabled the chat, so I was going to pop the links in there, but we can do that at the end. So the tool is designed for use by libraries and information organizations, particularly academic libraries, who are interested in understanding their organizational efforts in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The audit offers opportunities for libraries and other information organizations to identify a baseline for DEI endeavors, and then determine where efforts are being focused. So utilizing audit findings, libraries and information organizations can move forward to identify areas where efforts should be continued, as well as identify areas where efforts should begin or increase. The first version of the audit tool was developed in 2019 through 2020, and it is currently in its 3rd version. Our library worked with version 2. So next we'll discuss some of the key elements of the process we developed to implement the DEIA. So here on this slide, we show a breakdown of the overall audit process our library followed. And perhaps the most difficult and time-consuming work was occurred during the committee pre-work phase between March and September of 2022. The committee was responsible for activities such as deciding how audit groups would be organized and established. And the committee also identified working DEIA definitions to include in the audit instrument. Now, identifying these definitions was very necessary so that library employees would have an understanding of what is meant by diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, as these terms were referred to throughout the audit instrument. Ultimately, we decided to use campus definitions that had already been established through the development of the university's anti-racist and inclusive campus plan that I mentioned earlier. The committee was also responsible for reviewing the audit instrument for clarity, and an opportunity to provide feedback on the audit instrument was also extended to all library employees during this phase of the audit. During the pre-work phase, the committee also worked very closely with Dr. Bright to create FAQs and other resources that would help explain other audit activities, such as what to expect while participating in an audit working group. So by October of 2022, groups and individuals were invited to take the survey, and immediately after audit results went through an initial review, focus groups and one-on-one consultations were coordinated and took place in November. And in February of 2023, the final report from Dr. Bright was delivered to our committee and library leadership.
So one of the most important aspects of this entire process was to establish purpose, transparency, and consistency throughout the way we communicated about audit activities to library employees. From the very beginning, we established our purpose by sharing the dean's funding proposal and connecting the work back to campus initiatives. The next step was to bring library employees together to share information about the audit process and what to expect. Ultimately, we were able to maintain a consistent message through the process with the library all-employee forums and the creation of a diversity committee landing page on SharePoint, which is our library's intranet, which I will touch on again briefly in a moment. To give you the most accurate idea of how we communicated the DEIA process to our library colleagues, we're including the exact presentation that we delivered to them in September 2022. The Diversity Committee presented this at an all-library employee meeting to introduce the general structure of the audit, and examples of audit items and rating explanations were shared. The following 8 slides represent the Diversity Committee's presentation. First, we introduced Dr. Bright and her research so that library employees could familiarize themselves with the consultant we would be working with, and also provided some background on the extensive experience she has working with libraries in DEIA efforts. Then we demonstrated how to access information about the audit, including timeline, DEIA definitions, and frequently asked questions by navigating to the Diversity Committee landing page on our SharePoint. Information was added to this landing page as our work progressed, as you can see on the next slide. So this page continues to be updated regularly and is now a very informative resource for future related work. From here, library employees are able to find detailed information about confidentiality and how it would be maintained throughout the process, how to participate as a group or individual, and what to expect if they chose to participate in a focus group or a one-on-one confidential consultation with Dr. Bright. We also use this page to connect the library's DEIA to campus initiatives as a reminder of how this work aligns with our campus's anti-racism and inclusive campus plan. This was the location where copies of the final reports were posted as well, so they're always available for employees to reference or review. In the future, as we work toward addressing more audit recommendations, we can also look back to this resource as a roadmap of where we've been and also where we're going. Next, we shared the audit instrument structure and its 8 categories that would be assessed. We provided examples of audit items and explanation of each Likert scale rating so that our colleagues would know what to expect before completing it. There was also a rubric for participants to reference that specified how to categorize each of their answers. Next, we explained how audit groups would be organized by employee classification, with 1 group for administrators, up to 4 groups for faculty, and up to 5 groups for staff. We also discussed the role of group facilitators who were members of the diversity committee and also the library strategic planning team. These group facilitators helped to coordinate group meetings, manage deadlines, and brought group questions back to the diversity committee. And with the guidance of Dr. Bright, the committee decided to organize audit groups by employee classification to reduce unequal power dynamics within specific groups that may make some participants more hesitant to share their true feelings and perceptions of what's going on in the library. Organizing audit groups by employee classification also made it more likely that participants would share similarities in their experiences and therefore make it easier for them to come to a consensus rating. We discussed how focus groups led by Dr. Bright would work, emphasizing student employee participation as optional, and that those who did choose to participate would be compensated for their time. We also use this presentation as a heads up that a call for participation would be forthcoming to join these groups. And finally, we shared the project timeline at the end of the presentation. This library-wide presentation served as the foundation for all future audit activities, and we're proud to say that we were able to stick to this timeline very closely.
The initial report draft was first shared with the Dean of the Library and their Diversity Committee with an opportunity for us to ask questions and seek clarification of findings and recommendations. A final report was delivered to the library in February of 2023, which was shared library-wide through a variety of channels. The report, in both a short and long version, was posted to the Diversity Committee's landing page, and it was also emailed directly to all library employees. The Dean also shared the final report with Academic Affairs and the Division of Inclusive Excellence to begin having conversations about the library's next steps. We experienced a number of challenges throughout this project, including low participation in survey completion. In total, we had 4 groups and 11 individual submissions, and 4 focus groups were conducted. Which such low participation, our results do not represent a complete picture of library employee perspective. However, it does shed some light on where the library might want to consider where to focus initial efforts to address the audit findings. We also found it challenging to effectively share the audit results with all library personnel. The final report was 100 pages and too heavy of a lift for any one department to commit to. So department heads were asked to facilitate conversations with their teams to help move the conversation forward. The Diversity Committee charged with leading this work found it challenging to initiate next steps without support from the Dean of the Library, who initiated contact with the Division of Inclusive Excellence and facilitated introductions as we began exploring how to operationalize the DEIA work ahead of us. The Dean has since taken a step back and has adopted a more hands-off approach to allow opportunities for library employees to fully engage in DEI and assume leadership roles within their departments across the library and across campus. As we plan to focus future efforts, we are concerned about survey fatigue and potentially duplicating our past efforts. It will be important for us to maintain and communicate a clear purpose with each new project, and always connect the work back to where we began. Employee turnover will always be a challenge, so maintaining the Diversity Committee landing page as a resource to point new employees to will be crucial for our future development as a collective library unit. And finally, we acknowledge the high cost of emotional labor this work has on all who genuinely engage in it. Undertaking DEIA efforts can be an exhausting endeavor, especially for those groups that are underrepresented in an institution and are often the people expected to carry much of the emotional labor associated with leading this work. Working towards an operating operationalized model to support DEI efforts will help to lessen the burden of emotional labor for the few who most often carry it.
So what we're doing now is partnering with our university's Office for Cultural Transformation, which is a division of Inclusive Excellence, to work on This is important to ensure we are meeting library employees where they are schedule-wise and reducing any additional meetings as much as possible. With the help of the Office for Cultural Transformation, we have nearly finalized a workplace culture and needs assessment survey, which is in response to the audit recommendation to complete a library-focused climate assessment. This survey will determine the current climate of workplace environment and employees' experiences and identify workplace issues or concerns that impact employee relationships and well-being. We tried to mimic the same open communication, clear purpose, and transparency model with this survey as we did with the DEIA tool. And we recently held another all-library open forum where the team from the Office for Cultural Transformation was introduced and the purpose and process of the culture and needs assessment was explained in detail. The open forum gave employees a chance to ask questions about the survey and also allowed them time to think about potential responses to the survey without feeling rushed. The survey is scheduled to be conducted within the next month.
So as we move through this work, we are constantly reminded that it is indeed a continuous process. We have already identified future projects that will help the library continue working through the 13 audit recommendations, including establishing definitions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility that are specific to our work in the library, yet still align with campus definitions and initiatives. And we acknowledge the need to begin the necessary work to identify where DEIA fit within each library department and individual positions. Remembering that the audit results represent our library's baseline of DEIA efforts, we now have a guide to help us continually improve and invest in a library culture that respects, grows, and listens to all its members. We hope that by sharing our library's efforts to conduct an internal diversity audit to begin the work of identifying areas of focus and high priority, that you have a better understanding of the purpose and importance of conducting an internal diversity audit, that you have an idea of whether implementing the DEIA tool or one similar is appropriate for your institution, that you can identify key roles and staff who can help address DEIA efforts in your own library, and that you now have an awareness of potential partners within your library's parent organization who can assist in maintaining momentum with DEIA initiatives. Thank you for joining us for our presentation today, and we're happy to take any questions.
It looks like we have 2 questions in the Q&A, if you just wanted me to read them out loud.
Sure.
The first one is, what exactly were you auditing, your collection or the library atmosphere? I'm sorry, I'm just a bit confused. That's what the question was.
Thank you for the question. So the Alicia, if you want to go back to the slide 20. This kind of helps to shed some light on.
Let me know when to stop because I can't see what numbers they are.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
Which
go
one?
forward. The one that shares the ratings.
Oh, okay. This one?
Yes. So on this slide, we share basically the structure of the audit instrument. So it assesses 8 areas, 8 categories: strategy, structure, process, rewards, people, external DEI efforts, accessibility, users, employees. So we're assessing the activities that we're engaged in as employees, as well as the external efforts or internal efforts that we're putting towards programming, services, and that sort of thing. So we're essentially assessing everything that we're doing related to DEIA, internally focused and externally focused. So not a collections audit.
All right, the next question in the chat was, I work at SPL. Hi, neighbors. If I reach out directly, could I learn more about the specific recommendations from your audit?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our contact information is down below.
All right. The third question is, can you share the total estimated cost of this undertaking, consulting primarily?
I don't think at this time we can share that information, as it could be considered proprietary for the consultant.
All right.
And I don't know if we can at this point activate the chat. I have links to Dr. Bright and Jahan Consulting websites that I can enter into the chat.
All right, I've activated the chat, so that should work now.
Thank you.
All right. And which will probably be our final question looking at the time. Sorry if this was already mentioned since my internet went out temporarily. How do you plan to address the limited responses to the original survey?
I can try to answer part of that, maybe. I don't think that we actually can address the limited responses to the original survey that already happened. Just knowing that that is a limited set of library personnel. But something that helped us kind of frame how we looked at library participation rates was collaborating with the Office for Cultural Transformation. When we're looking at indicators of workplace climate, oftentimes the participation level in DEIA efforts like this is in and of itself an indicator of our workplace climate. So I think we can use that kind of as a data point of pointing to low participation rates and how can we increase maybe morale around DEIA efforts. I don't have a straightforward answer for that, but that's just a different way to think about it.
And it looks like you may have just answered the final question that just came in was, do you have any opinions about how the low participation in the survey relates to the current atmosphere? And sounds like you just may have covered that. And that's all the questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thank you.